friends. Welcome back to the Flint Community Webinar, your community resource. Happy New Year to everyone. We're going to be talking about some really important topics today, and I'm really excited to bring our wonderful expertise to you today. We're going to be talking about mental health and how to renew and recharge after the holidays. We've got some great people here to talk to you about that. We've brought Carrie Chanter back, who's always a wonderful ray of sunshine and talks to us about resources that Genesee Health System has in the community around prevention and wellness. We've got Dr. Crystal Soderna, who's a wonderful area of expertise and is going to talk to us a little bit about healthcare and parenting in the new year. And we've got our wonderful Dr. G and Nurse T, who are out in the community and going to talk to us about how we can prioritize our mental health. Before we get into that, I'd like to take a moment of silence for one of the giants in our community that we lost over the holidays. Dr. Barbara Wolf was an amazing, amazing champion for mental health. She was a resource to anyone who encountered her. In the College of Human Medicine, she was our psychiatry clerkship director for many years and was our director of behavioral health at McLaren. But moreover, she was a colleague, friend, and family member, mother to wonderful people. And we're going to take a moment of silence just as we remember her impact and we remember how much she meant to all of us. Thank you. As we remember the impact that Dr. Wolf had, it's important for us to think about the resources and spaces and places in which people can have access to the healthcare resources they need, particularly as they're trying to access mental health. So I'm really thankful today that we have Carrie Chanter here to talk to us a little bit about the resources that Genesee Health Systems has in the community for us to access the mental health care that we need. So thank you so much for being with us today. And thanks for bringing that ray of sunshine with you.
Oh, thank you. I wore bright colors today to try to make people happy, including myself. Hello, thank you for the nice introduction. My name is Carrie Chanter, and I have definitely presented on this webinar before, but happy to be back. I was kind of asked to talk a little bit about some of our mental health services in our county, but I'm framing it around how mental health needs to be important, especially as we exit this crazy holiday season. So I do want to take a little bit of time kind of level setting us to remind ourselves that there are some different things that we should look for and what is post-holiday stress. And just to remind everybody, holidays are meant to be wonderful and spend time with family and take a pause for a minute, but that can be very different for lots of people. People that struggle with mental illness, this can be a really, really tough time. Maybe you have grief in your family. So for lots of people, the holidays are filled with excitement, and celebrations, but there's generally some sort of chaos that comes with it. I know for years I have struggled as a mother to, on Christmas Day, be fully present, to be mindful, because all I really want to do is just go lay back in bed and sleep. And that's very vulnerable for me, because I know that as a mom, we're supposed to be so happy on Christmas morning. It's going to be so great. But really, what that was 6 weeks of chaos and stress in my life that I didn't get a ton of help with, what many of us don't. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's here. Now what? So remembering that the holidays mean a lot of things to lots of people, and it doesn't necessarily always equate to joy, which, we're supposed to be joyful, right? But listen, the holidays are over. We might feel drained right now, stressed and burned out. I personally have a little bit of relief that we're through it, we're done, and it's time to have a fresh new start. So hopefully today we're going to talk about that kind of fresh new start and ways to really focus on you and some different mental health resources that we can share. It's really important to find ways to manage post-holiday stress and embrace the changes that come with it. It's so drastic. Like, I look around my house, and I just took Christmas down a few days ago. It does feel funny. It feels funny. My kids think it feels funny. I've got piles of things that I still need to put away, but I can't quite get myself to do it. So I'm focusing on like 10 things a day. Like, if I can put away 10 things a day, even if it's something as small as a candle that somebody gifted or something, that's how I kind of focus on getting my house back in order. So, like, as we talk about tips for handling, and I don't want to take away doctor's points and after me, Kadera. So different tips though to handle post-holiday stress. Lots of people say lots of different things, but in general, they all kind of circle back, taking time to rest and recharge, and maybe you can integrate mindfulness into your daily activities. There's lots of really small mindfulness practices that only take even a few minutes each day. If you could make those couple minutes for yourself each day, that would be super helpful, I believe. Letting go of the holiday stress, setting realistic expectations. We all know that resolutions tend to fail. Maybe we set intentions for the new year versus resolutions, because we know what happens with most resolutions pretty quickly. Creating some sort of healthy routine, getting out of the old routine that you were in, maybe with I don't know about you, but about 3 weeks before the holidays, there's food that just starts coming in, and you kind of get off track, and you're not meal prepping, and you're not grocery shopping, and you're just kind of going with the flow, whatever's in the house. Well, that's time to kind of get new again, get fresh again, and actually be open to the changes that are going to come to us in the new year. Like, there's some really great changes that could come. Celebrating those small wins, like I said, like for me, I cannot tackle putting away Christmas all in one day. I can't do it. It's just too much. And so celebrating the small win, like, oh, we got the tree down today. Great. Oh, we got the pile over in that corner taken care of. Great. So just making sure you're celebrating those small wins. But honestly, we need to reach out to support, because what can happen is that after the holidays, it might come to light that you might be struggling with more than just holiday blues. It could be an exacerbation of anxiety and depression that needs care and help. So I want people to walk away knowing when to seek help. Just making sure that you know that you're not alone. Like, according to NAMI, 64% of people with mental illness, which, I'm sorry, I used an abbreviation, MI, with mental illness, report holidays make their conditions actually worse, which is probably why I tend to get real anxious around the holidays, because there's lots of things that can happen. I have some past trauma as a child that, like, growing up with an alcoholic father, you really never knew what holidays were going to be like, right? So you have that internalized stress. So just being aware that you may have some factors that might make the holidays a little bit more intense for you. But thinking about things, those feelings that we have, they can range anywhere from disappointment, emptiness, lack of motivation. These are like those holiday blues symptoms. So it can be just disappointment and emptiness, lack of motivation, but it also can leave you with feelings of slight depression. But it basically, those tackling loneliness and depression and grief and stuff, it just tends to get worse during the holidays. So just being aware of that for your own self, giving yourself that grace, but also when you're dealing with other people, especially if you're in a human services field, just knowing that sometimes people can be really amped up. The spillover effect from the holidays may exacerbate the situation. It sometimes takes a little bit. Like on January 1st, I'm not ready to hit the road running. Like it takes me a minute to, all right, I'm processing all the holiday stuff. Now it's time to move on and recharge. So this is about the perfect timing for this webinar. If you can't shake those feelings of coming out of the holiday, it may be time to talk to a therapist or seeking out help. Like I know everyone talks about it's okay to not be okay, but I mean it. It's okay to not be okay. Sometimes the holidays just highlight some other things that might be going on that you might need to seek help for. This slide, on the right, I'm going to start on the right-hand side. If you did not know, our Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is a national hotline, that changed a couple of years ago to 988. So just kind of keep that in your pocket, not only for yourself, but for friends and coworkers that might be struggling. You do not have to be suicidal to call 988. See, it says Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Even if it is a small crisis, you can call them. And it'll be routed to a mental health professional. So, and it is anonymous. So that's exciting. That's good for people. On the left-hand side, you guys, we have a ton of resources, mental health resources in Genesee County. We are very, very fortunate. We have a 24/7 crisis hotline that you can call at any time. It is staffed and manned, and the number is up there. We have a texting line that you also can text because a lot of at least our youth don't even want to call for a pizza, let alone call for help. So the texting might be helpful for some people. Just know the old hotline will work, but 988 is a lot quicker, and we've seen massive increase in utilization since 988 has been launched. So I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, but I think what it's doing is it's opening some doors for people to get help. So just wanted to celebrate that small one. I think people are utilizing help more. And so we're happy about 988 for sure. So just know that there's lots of help locally. Genesee Health System is our community mental health for Genesee County. And really, there's no closed door, there's no wrong entrance into the system. And that's why people tend to struggle when they navigate mental health care. They don't know where to jump in at. And really, it's our job to help you figure out, where you're at. So if you call a certain number, it's not the right number, it's okay. We can get you where you need to be. You can walk in, you can call, you can text, and we can get you started in that process. I did want to highlight one of the greatest things that we have in Flint and Genesee County. And I know we've talked about this before on the call, but for those of you who don't know, we have a behavioral health urgent care. And when we think about urgent care, a lot of times, again, as a sports mom, I'm always in and out of urgent care for something. And it's generally not my primary care. I've got a sprained ankle. I got to have somebody look at it tonight. I need an x-ray, and so we have no problem utilizing urgent care for lots of things, but what we have not done is use it for behavioral health or mental health issues. So this is kind of a new concept that has really swept the nation, and we are one of the communities that have an urgent care for behavioral health. We are lucky. It's keeping people out of the waiting rooms at hospitals, and we kind of have a fast way to track people into mental health treatment. So basically, you guys, anybody can access the BHUC, which is Behavioral Health Urgent Care, regardless of your insurance or ability to pay. Even if you are passing through Flint, passing through Genesee County, and you have a mental health crisis, please go to the BHUC. We have a mechanism to be able to pay for that through the millage and other resources. So please know that it's open to everybody. When do you access the BHUC? People do it for all different types of things. You do not have to be suicidal to walk in. It's okay. You might be struggling with managing your depression, anxiety, or panic attacks. Maybe you believe that your substance use is creating a problem. You might have a substance use disorder. You can always walk in for that. So let them decide what the real crisis is. It's okay to walk in with a crisis for you. So how do you access? There's a picture of our building right here, and I'm going to pause for a minute. Many of you might know that did move our main campus, last May. So we have been in our new place about 7, 8 months, and it is beautiful. It's the old Baker College campus on the corner of Bristol and Fenton. And but we have not moved this BHUC over there yet. This is technically kitty corner from Hurley, and it's there. It's still there. Our goal is in the next, quarter of this year to have the BHUC fully transitioned over to our new campus. So just be looking for those alerts that, hey, our BHUC has moved. It's a much nicer, bigger space, a lot more privacy for different ambulance drop-offs or people that are dropping off. It's just a lot more secure and private, and we believe it's going to be able to treat our patients better. So for now, though, it is kitty corner to Hurley. You can walk in without an appointment. You can always call. There's hours, and so we want people to utilize this. I do want to share a quick video. Apologize, I should have had it pulled up. My apologies, it's coming. Okay. Oops, I'm gonna stop here. Sorry, guys, I haven't done this in a minute.
No worries.
Okay,
I
it's
think
coming.
you just taught us that we've got to allow ourselves some grace, right?
Some grace. We have to have some grace. I'm hoping that the volume will share. This is just a quick 1.5-minute video that we did surrounding our BHUC, so it becomes a little bit more familiar for people on what to expect. Let me go ahead.
Consumer has gotten into services, and they continue, and they're able to come back and tell me, we did this. It's never about me. It's always about we and us. I was a consumer. I was a patient. And also I was a person with a disease of addiction. I did not realize I even had a mental health illness. As I began to come to GHS and get services for the substance abuse and the mental health issues, and once we did it simultaneously, then and only then it began to work for me. And now I'm on the other side, helping other people know that there is hope for them too. I've experienced it. I've lived it.
One might know that they need to call if you just feel off. It doesn't have to be a huge crisis. And that's what we really call it, the behavioral health urgent care instead of a crisis center.
Once the consumers arrived, they would meet with the front desk staff, our Met clerks, and get checked in, and they would assign them to a coordinator and figure out what brought them here and how can I best support them.
We're available 24/7 for anyone who lives in or passes through Genesee County, any age, birth to 110 years old, any level of insurance or income.
Even through a crisis, there's always hope. When things seems like it can't work out, there's always hope.
So that is one of our staff. She's amazing. It's Shirley Cathy. And I've had the pleasure of working with her for quite some time. And just so that you're aware, she is a certified peer recovery coach, which what that means is that she has some lived experience with addiction and substance use disorder. And she has been sober and for many years, and people feel really comfortable with her. And we see people receiving services at a greater rate when they're working with somebody who has been through what they have been through. So that is one of our staffing models, and our models is that we've got a lot of peers that help support our patients and consumers. One other service that's run out of our BHUC is called the Intensive Crisis Stabilization Services. I don't expect anybody to remember what that is, but as long as you call our BHUC, they will hook somebody up with this service if it makes sense. And really what it's open to is children and young adults in our community from 0 to 21. And what this is instead of you going to the BHUC, It is one of our BHUC's mobile teams coming to the home. So this is initiated by a parent or a caregiver in their home that says, my child or my young adult is struggling. I can't get them to do X, Y, and Z. It is a crisis. I need you to come. And generally within an hour, maybe even a half an hour, most times the team gets there. They're able to mitigate usually what's going on. They can do assessments and then refer to a greater level of treatment if needed, and so on. So it's just another option for families and parents that may have some young people at home that don't necessarily want to walk in, but might want someone to come to their home. Something I want to just remind people of, we do have a grief support group that meets actually virtual. And so that is good for many people, but I know sometimes people want to be in person as well. So I'll have to send along those resources. But this number on here, if anybody wants to sign up for this course, they have to call the number first though. And then after calling the number, they get sent all the information of how to log in. But it's an hour and a half on Thursdays, just so that you're aware. There's another really cool resource called Stay Well that's through the state of Michigan. I really encourage you to Google this at a later time. There's so many resources on there. There's a whole series of mindfulness videos and tutorials, lots and lots of things for children, for adults, and it's all about mental wellness. And so I do encourage you to check out some of those things. There's really cool things for teachers too to use. So this is a great website. Just check it out. Lots of really cool things that you can do at home.
And Carrie, we're seeing your share settings. We're not.
Oh,
you're in this. I forgot what it's called. Your presentation mode. It's
my presentation mode. So you're not seeing it quite the right way. Sorry. Let's see if I can figure that out here. Let's do share. I'll try it again. Is it still in that presentation?
No, we're perfect.
Okay, good. I do, a lot of you have heard of these, and I am not promoting one over the other. Some of them were free during the pandemic, but have gone back to a cost-based model. Some of them are still have a free, like small subscription that's free, but check these out. I know a lot of people do seek this type of outside help, and it's usually off your phone on an app, and maybe it's a mindfulness activity you do before you go to bed, or maybe you make it just a part of your daily stuff. There's usually some journaling, some tracking of emotions that you can do in these different apps as well. And I guess I would just open it up for discussions or questions or any sort of feedback that either the panelists have, and go from there.
This is awesome. Maybe, and we'll open it up for questions after Dr. Soderna gives her presentations, because you have so much overlap in your content, which is amazing. So I really love this idea of giving yourself some grace as you come back from a really busy time, and a time that sort of people think that you're supposed to be joyous and, oh, it's this new start, and we don't give a lot of context for how overwhelming that can be. So really appreciate the context and the resources that you share. As you think about some of those resources that you ended on, I wonder if you talk a little bit about how people can use those resources and how they might use them in their day-to-day, or when they could be considering using those resources. I think about, if you go back to that slide, I think about the Calm app or things like that, if you're having trouble with sleep, or if you're having trouble with a lot of thoughts, then maybe journaling. But I wonder if you have any strategies or ideas about how people might be using those resources.
First thing I would recommend is, just because if one of them doesn't work, doesn't mean they're all not going to work, right? So it's kind of like, changing your socks. If you have a therapist you don't like, you change your socks, you change your underwear, you find somebody new that works for you. You're not going to keep wearing uncomfortable underwear, right? So
that might be my favorite mental health analogy I've ever heard. We've got to keep that. Don't wear uncomfortable underwear. Bras. Just get new ones.
Right.
If your therapist is uncomfortable, find a different one.
Find one that works for you. So I would say that all of them all have their strengths and specialties. I've checked out many of them. So that's one thing I would caution people on. And I also would not ever buy in right away. Usually there's some sort of free something so you can see if you actually like it. I think sometimes people do it before bed. Sometimes people do it before they even get out of bed. I know for me, I am a to-do list person. Um, and this is kind of silly, but I found last year that I actually had to write on my to-do list each day. I would put an M, and that means mindfulness. Like even if it is seriously 1 or 2 minutes to shut it down. And maybe you do want a guided meditation that's available through a lot of these apps or online on the YouTube. And YouTube, there's a ton of really good mindfulness, activities and stuff that you can do. Again, journaling is super underrated. I don't know why people don't journal more, but there's a lot of evidence that suggests that really can help people process a lot of the thoughts that they are having. So.
I love that. I love it. And you are not alone in like writing down a little reminder. I will plan my week and have to remind myself, okay, get your journaling in or get your meditation in. So I appreciate that little piece and
Yep.
you doing that with us. Thank you so much, Carrie. Don't go away because I'm
Oh,
sure
no.
like you and Dr. Soderna will have amazing things to talk about together. I want to make sure we give enough time to Dr. Soderna to talk about what it's like to be a parent navigating these scenarios. And I'm particularly interested in this as being a parent myself. So I'm going to be quiet and listen because I need all the skills I can get. So thank you, Dr. Soderna. We appreciate you.
Goodness, don't we all? Thank you so much. I am Dr. Crystal Soderna. I've been here once before. I'm thrilled to be back again today to really hone in and focus on parents. And I'm always looking for an excuse to talk about children's or parental mental health. I think the holidays is a great kind of time where we have an uptick in some of the joys, but also some of the challenges of parenting. So I'm going to cover holiday related stuff, but also just kind of parenting in general. I wanted to hear really badly from our attendees today. Are you a parent or caregiver? How many do you have that you're responsible for? And perhaps you're a caregiver to elderly folks or others who need support and not just children. And which holidays are you bouncing back from? Because of course, there are many, many holidays that have happened over the last quarter of a year, let alone the last month. So in what way you're able to contribute, we would love to see that while I'm talking.
Yeah, throw that in the chat and I'll throw it out as you're talking. I'll keep a track of it while you're talking and we'll let you know what we've got.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So the holidays were probably a very magical time for you, right? Joy, laughter, memory making, carrying out old traditions, coming up with new traditions, telling stories, and just laughing till your belly hurts. I think if we're being really honest, they're also very challenging though. And I think Carrie did a beautiful job of pointing this out. There's planning, there's inviting, there's the cooking, cleaning, entertaining, and hosting that's above and beyond. There's the decorating and the family photos for the holiday card that you want to send out. There's the temptations everywhere to just spend, spend, spend. Whether you actually do and put yourself into debt or you choose not to and then feel guilt for not doing that, either way, it can feel like a lose-lose. There's seeing people that you love a lot and there's seeing people you love a little, right? Like the folks that you're like, I really don't love seeing this person, but here's my once a year. Here it comes. There's preparing the perfect moments, right? Like all these things. And this is all while working and paying bills and keeping the lights on and the everyday parenting and still carting your kids to all of their events and things they need to do. And then on top of all that, as Carrie also brought up really beautifully, if we're struggling with any kind of mental health difficulties, loneliness, isolation, grief and loss, recent deaths, such as the loss of Dr. Wolf for many of us today, it definitely adds additional elements of challenge. And so what I would say is the holidays like to take a magnifying glass and put it on all the things. The joys get bigger, but the challenges can get bigger too. And then let's not forget this lovely intruder who seems to just find their way into the hours and minutes of the morning, the night, and everywhere else. Seeing one Pinterest perfect family photo after another, looking at all the commercials of like, here's the next big gift you have to get for your kid. And they're marketing to your kids, not to you. And then they're bugging and adding to their lists of what they want, right? Or just another news segment on the event of the year or the activity of the year, the thing we have to get into, and never mind seeing all of your 300 closest friends and families in, again, their perfect what they have going on, which we know was like the microsecond of goodness in the bigger picture. Nevertheless, our brains look at that and it sets a level of expectation there, whether we're aware of it or not, for perfection. And that just adds to what ultimately ends up being holidays that were likely both magical, but also stressful. And the other fun fact here is parenting shares that parallel. It is both an incredibly joy-filled, magical time and also extremely, extremely challenging and a huge source of worry. And those two things are kind of side by side, lifelong, from when we have kids and beyond. So we know the joys, right? Deeper love than some ever feel anywhere else. The connections, the memories, the traditions, some of the highest points in our lives will be the times that involve our children. And yet the opposite is also true. Some of the biggest challenges and spaces of responsibility, suffering, sacrifice, selflessness come with parenting too. So I'm going to take us on a little bit of a turn in that direction because I think it's really important to put words to the struggles of parenting as much as we put words to the perfection happy moments of it. So some survey data looking across our country suggests that 33 out of every 100 parents report very high levels of stress in the past month of when they were surveyed. And this was done in the last couple of years. And that's compared to only 20 out of 100 for every other adult out there that's not a parent. 48 out of every 100 parents report that most days their stress is completely overwhelming. That's big wording, right? Completely suggesting all encompassing, and overwhelming meaning more than we have the resources to handle. That's almost half of all parents. And that's compared to only about 1 in 4 or 26 out of every 100 adults that are not parents. Additionally, about 65 out of every 100 parents report that they feel lonely. And as for our single parents, that goes up to 77 out of every 100. And about 70 out of every 100 report that parenting's now more difficult than it's ever been. And the top 2 big reasons, if you've got teens or tweens, you will be nodding your head to this, is technology and social media and their use and how they've just infiltrated our life. And so how did we get here? Why is parenting challenges on the rise? Why is it creating so much struggle for us? Well, surely we have kind of some of the old problems we've always had: financial concerns and stability, poverty, children's health and safety, navigating the teenage years, but really at each developmental milestone, there's the challenges we navigate. But we also have a lot of new problems that parents of the past did not face, navigating technology and social media. We have a children's mental health crisis on our hands. We have fears about our kids' mental health. We worry about school safety. We worry about gun violence. Parents are more isolated and lonely, as we've shown from the research. More adults in the homes are working and working full time, which means families in general are spread much more lean. It's hard to find good formal childcare, and it's hard to afford good formal childcare. The cost of everyday items we need, like food, are on the rise, and sometimes we have to go without basic needs like food. And those are some very, very big new challenges, in addition to just the cultural pressures I've sort of alluded to, of pack schedules, of high expectations, kind of that grind culture where we work around the clock, we don't have boundaries or limits around things. We'll never do enough. We always need to do more. And there's just simply is not enough time. So that is how we got here. And we know that there are some parents who actually face more of these challenges than others, right? And that just makes sense to think about. So our families who are exposed to or experience community-based or family-based violence, our families who've experienced recent family disruption due to separations, death, divorce, folks moving into the home or leaving the home, folks who are experiencing poverty, folks who are experiencing any kind of injustices or discriminations based on aspects of their cultural identity. So their race, their sexual orientation, etc., are all individuals who are going to be at increased risk for even more parental stress. So what happens next when we are this stressed out? We're having the joy thing going, but we're also super stressed out as parents. The research suggests that what comes next is parents will often, in times where the stress is on a little bit of a peak, like the holidays, shift to a more immediate or short-term time frame. And when I explain what this means, most parents are going to go, yeah, that was me. That was me last night. That was me 2 weeks ago. This is when, instead of looking long-term at what we want our future with our kids to look like and how to get there now, we are literally looking at, how do I motivate them to move and get out this door in 10 minutes? Because we have to get to that practice. We have to get to Aunt Betty's house. We've got to get to the store and then to 5 other things. And so all of a sudden, the parenting style becomes one of, how do I motivate my child to move and move now? And we know the ways that we do that. And they don't tend to be healthy, right? So being more harsh, being critical, yelling or making demands of our kids, using intimidation or physical force like spanking. This can lead us, when we get into this kind of survival parenting mode, to be a bit inconsistent in our parenting, because when we have slightly less stress, we can kind of simmer it down. Then the second the stress comes back, we like pop right back into it. And when kids don't know what to predict, it's a bit like walking on eggshells. You just don't know what's going to happen. And then oftentimes for us as parents, when we get into that survival mode parenting, we forget or lose sight of our kiddos' strengths. We lose sight of the impact of our actions long term, or just what that does to the relationship between us and our kids. So then what happens? Well, the reason that we get into survival parenting and we get into like a shorter time frame in our focus is because in the moment, it actually works. When we parent that way in the moment, kids do cooperate oftentimes. They're scared or for a variety of other reasons. And then parents feel temporary relief from stress because they're like, okay, they put their boots on, we're in the car. Whew, it worked, right? But in the long term, what the research tells us is this is problematic for parents, it's problematic for kids, and it's problematic for the relationship. Parents end up being more stressed, more aggravated, more prone to angry episodes. Kids tend to be less cooperative and misbehave more. And then the engagement in general between parents and amongst family members tends to go away. And I want to point out, this is something every single one of us as a parent is prone to, and likely has done on many occasions when we've felt stressed out. This is mothers, this is fathers, this is extended family members, this is the well-meaning parent who's like, I'm getting the trophy this year for best parent. This is every parent. Because I think we're tempted when I start talking about these things and say, oh yeah, that's not me, that's everybody else. But this is, no one's immune to this. So we are starting as a culture to recognize this. There's a lot of articles that are starting to come out in popular press. And then there's also, even on the science academic article side, in social media, you're starting to see more and more folks saying, hey, we need to do something here. Let's focus on our parents. And then so beautifully in August of 2024, our Surgeon General put out a lovely advisory, really just bringing to light how under pressure parents are and why and what we need to do. And as he so beautifully states, we need a fundamental shift in how we value and prioritize parental well-being. And I think that is so well put. As someone whose entire career has been in pediatrics, we focus a lot on kids, but we also know that the most immediate social circles around kids have tremendous influence and impact on their outcomes. And so we always want to be looking above and beyond just the child. So the mental health of parents is a public health issue, whether we're framing it in January just after the holidays or in March or September or August. And so how do we overcome this? Where do we go from here? What we know is when we have an issue that impacts a whole population, like all the parents, half the parents, most of the parents in our country, then we need to have an everyone has a role, all hands on deck, everybody's part of the solution type of approach. So I'm going to just briefly go through so you know what I mean by what are some of the bigger roles, and then we're going to focus into the tune-up for ourselves as parents and what can we start doing today. So the cultural shift, sort of the attitude about parenting that we need to do, we need to start respecting time as a parent as much as working at a paying job. This has to happen. We need to start acknowledging, appreciating, and equally respecting the invisible labor of being a parent. We need to think about society raising kids and not just parents alone, right? Yes, the parent is the primary influencer and model and person raising a child, but really the society, the standards, the policies, and the programs, that is what allows a parent to flourish in that role or to suffer and struggle in that role. And communities that care and connect are absolutely a big part of that fabric. And then with those two kind of attitudes, we need to think about our resources, our policies, our workplaces, and how do we reflect these values and attitudes in them. So I can circle back to these during the Q&A if people really want to go into it, but I wanted you to just be able to see at the national, state, and local government level, having more funding, paid family leaves, paid sick time, addressing and making sure that everyone has access to high quality mental health care as an insurance benefit, for example. At the employer side, again, thinking through the policies and programs that would support well-being for parents, thinking through how we make sure parents have good health insurance to be healthy and well, thinking through how we help the leaders in our organizations really be aware of recognizing when folks are struggling and supporting them in getting health, really being aware of how to support work-life balance. We need to think about having parents in leadership roles so that that lived experience is woven into the policies and practices of our employment agencies. And then when we think in our community-based organizations, schools, the dialogue has to start. And by dialogue, I mean, we just need to start talking about what it means to be a parent. What are the stresses? What are the sources of health and well-being? And doing this in culturally reflective ways. So having folks from different parts of the community come together in community spaces, having coffee conversations, meeting at the library, meeting at a park, and really talking through what's going on here. Continuing to build additional resources, which Carrie showed us a lot of the really incredible resources we're so lucky to have in Genesee County. Creating opportunities for supportive social connections, elevating parent and caregiver voices when communities are investing in these spaces so that they're informed by those that they're designed to help, etc. So now I'm going to spend the last of my time just really getting into what do we do as parents? Like, what's our tune-up going to be? So this is where you can like really cue in. And I'm going to try to give you like some really concrete things you can do. And I'm happy to elaborate on any of these again as anyone would like. But first and foremost, all of us need to start challenging the stigma that the news and the media suggests, which is that parents are perfect. Parenting should look perfect. It's never messy. We need to start talking more openly and having what I'll call exquisitely courageous conversations about what parenting is really like. Stigmas only stay a stigma when they are kept in the dark and they are kept a secret. So we need to put it out there. Connect with your support networks early and often. Share the love that you have, the great memories, the funny times with kids, but also share the load and the burden. And I mean that both like verbalizing it and talking about it, but also sharing the load. You can do batch cooking with your friends and take turns and everybody takes it home. If you have like a holiday where you give out desserts, get together and make them together. And then you get 10 desserts at once instead of one person doing all of that in 10 different households. Gather and stay connected. We know that isolation is a huge amplifier of our distress and difficulties. So connect early and often. Prioritize your mental health and your wellness. And this is where I go back to just, you cannot suffer in silence. So many of your thoughts, your feelings, your insecurities, your vulnerabilities, that sense of not being enough or being inadequate or a failure are shared by so many other parents. And if we don't talk about it, we don't know that. We think it's a me problem. Carrie had shared this too, but 988 is such an important phone number to have programmed into your phone. You can text that number, you can call that number, you can put 988 into Google and a web page will come up where you can do messaging through the web page. But this is a place to not only get support in live time in that moment, but also get referral information that is local to you and based on your insurance so that you can get connected to a professional longer term. A few other things, ask for help. And this can be big and small. This is a hard one for a lot of us. Like, again, I'm super mom. I have to keep it all together. I need to be perfect. I've got to do it all alone. Is maybe a way of thinking that was useful at one time, but we are outgrowing that. Society's forcing us to outgrow that. We have to rally and ask for help. And this might be the one time social media can be helpful. It's not all bad. You can find mom groups, dad groups, grandmother groups, aunt groups. You can find your people. If you can't find them in your physical geographic location, you can find them through social media. Know yourself. What are your strengths you can leverage? When do you need to ask for help because it's not your skill? What are your limits? And what are the signs in yourself that you need help? So I know for me, I'm a morning person. I wake up like ready to go 100 miles an hour, but about 7:30 p.m., I start hitting like my witching hour. I'm going to get less patient. I'm going to be more tired. I'm going to be more prone to be irritable and cranky in response to requests from my kids. And knowing that, I start kind of warning my kids, like anything you need, it's 6:30. We've got 30 minutes. Let's go. Let's get through the list because then it's downtime. And I know I need that, and that works for my family. So knowing what yours are and how to build that into your life and humbly acknowledge it to everyone because we are all human and have limits is important. And then lastly, we all have to work on challenging that status quo of perfection. And that's the only thing we can put out there. And so I will lead by example. I observed Christmas in my household, and I did not send cards this year. I did a digital post, and this was it. And this was a photo that was taken of me and my two children many years ago. And they were then, I think, about 2 and 5. And I just love this picture because this is real life. This is what it looks like. It's not everyone looking straight at the camera and it's perfectly focused and we're all symmetric and everybody's hair is great. It's the toddler pouting. It's the other kiddo looking the other way. It's me just trying to make life work. And I just think if we can all allow ourselves to be more human and out there as the humans we are, we will move that needle in what we can tolerate. The last thing that I want to share is if you're not a parent, but you're wondering what you can do and how you can help, be there to offer support and lend a hand. Be there to connect early and often, and then see them and parents for who they are, the wonderful gifts and the challenges that come with parenting. Validate those like, oh, that sounds so tough. Just be there, sit with them in it. And if you're seeing signs they may be struggling, it's okay to say something from the place of a concerned friend to support them. The last thing I want to say is any small change you can make from anything Carrie said or anything I say or anything else that follows matters. And if we think about it like our future kind of depends on it, it does. And every little bit will make a big difference. That's all I have. Thank you.
That's so super cool. I'm going to follow the lead and give a parenting story. So my kids, I'll read to my kids before bed, except my older kid who now reads to herself, which is delightful because I love that she has that. And by your third book, you're like, okay, please just go to bed. And so I start skipping pages. I'm like, you're no longer paying that close attention. I've done the reading. I got you 2 books in. We're going to skip a page. We're going to get through this book quicker. Carrie, Crystal, that was amazing. Those were really amazing resources and tips and tricks. I really appreciate them. And I know our panelists and our participants today really appreciated them. You had a couple parents in the chat like, yep, I just hosted Thanksgiving. Yep, I am the person who is looking at the people on social media like, why are your pictures so perfect? And why can't I do what you're doing? And how are you getting to the gym and getting your kids and making these holiday presents and all of these things? So you have completely normalized that it is okay to do what you can and take some time for yourself. So we certainly appreciate it. I want to give to both of you one of the questions that we had, and both of you can chime in with your expertise. There was a question about any advice for those handling grief, flashbacks, or PTSD, or trauma for those whose anniversaries might coincide with the holidays.
I think the only thing I would jump in and say is that's grief is so tricky because it looks so different for everybody. And I think it's really important, especially, if you don't go to therapy already on a regular basis, maybe knowing that the anniversary time's coming up or a holiday, like some sort of trigger that might be really intense. It might be smart to talk to somebody, not, preferably a therapist, but honestly, even just talking to friends and talking more about it. Like I loved what Dr. Sedurna said about about stigma. Like the reason things have stigma is because it's in the dark. And the more that we can talk about it, like it's okay. So I love that this person is reaching out and saying, I've struggled with grief, but that's the only thing that came to the top of my head. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Carrie. I think the things I would add, especially if you're in the parent role and you're like, yikes, how do I like buffer my kids from my own stuff? I think that's one of the toughest things as a parent. You're human and you're allowed to display emotion around your kids. I think if you can give words to it, because if you don't give words to it, they will. And their development will make that semi-logical or not always really make sense. And so it might be best practice to say, hey, Christmas, if you observe Christmas, maybe that's a holiday. Christmas Day is really hard for me. It's wonderful and there's exciting parts, but it's tough for me too because of what happened to, Aunt Sarah or what have you. And so sometimes you may see me looking a little bit sadder and sometimes I'm going to look a bit happier because I'm feeling both the joy and the excitement of what's happening and also the loss and what that means to me. And I'm going to be okay, but I want you to know what you're going to see, right? Go right ahead.
Well, I just love that so much because I think about as an educator, one of the things is like you when you're educating someone, if you can explain it well, then you understand it. And a thing that I endeavor to do with my kids is exactly that, is I don't think there's something that we shouldn't be talking about. I just have to figure out how to meet her or my daughter where she is and having those conversations. And one of the things we've said is like, I've been a parent for my oldest kid, I've been a parent as long as she's been a kid, right? And so there's this idea of she has to have an example of how to work through difficult emotions and have known that I was never perfect, right? And had to work through difficult emotions. So I love that example of saying, no, I might be going through a hard time, because then your kid has an example of how to communicate when they're going through a hard time and that it's okay for them to go through a hard time and that hard times might happen. And they don't have this magical idea of the world as this place where things that are hard may not happen. So I just appreciated that. I want to, as you give more expertise, I want to bring Dr. G forward to join this panel of wonderful expertise, but I want to let you finish your thoughts. Sorry, Dr. Sedurna.
Oh, okay. The only other thing I would add is if you can anticipate some bigger disruptions from thoughts and feelings, like flashbacks or something that's really going to take you out of the present moment, thinking through what types of behavioral health supports can you put in place proactively. Maybe you have a family member on call who can come grab the kids if you do need to take a moment to de-escalate, get on a crisis line, get things under control. Maybe you want to have a safe space in your house that is already kind of zenned out, right? This doesn't need to be a whole room. It could be a corner of a room or like your bed where you're like, this is where I'm going to go to calm myself down. Or you have the phone a friend. You've called your friend. You're like, listen, I may be reaching out to you between this date and this date because I just feel something's going to come up, and they're ready and able. So just being proactive.
Mm-hmm.
This is just awesome. Like I said, I really stood out the stigma and the self-stigma, breaking down the stigma, like the societal standards of how people view you. But the biggest thing, I'm also a person who has lived experience with mental illness, is that self-stigma that prevents you from seeking help. And you hear people say it's okay, but I don't want people to think that I'm losing it, or I don't want people to think that, I'm the C word. So giving yourself that grace is the biggest takeaway, is, being kind to yourself. But sometimes, have to build persona. So I really think it's a great takeaway. This is a really great presentation that's really needed in our community today.
Thank you so much. We've got one other question around, and it's more of a statement. Gary Johnson says, don't forget about the baby boomers or the mature / elderly persons who might need help post holidays as well. And so we've got 5 minutes left. If there's any last thoughts you have for different populations, for populations that might be in that age group that Gary suggested, or populations we might have not discussed yet.
I know we work with the seniors at, the senior center. So just basically having that, like I say, that friendship, that bonding time, getting out of your comfort zone, finding senior centers, and talking, like they're different, like I say, different stages in their life. And so sometimes they're kind of forgotten about. And even the grandparents, I like how you have the caregivers. Sometimes the grandparents are taking on the role of the parents, and they need that support as well, and don't know where to seek that out because it's different. They raise their children. Now they find themselves in the age where they should be retiring, and now they're back in that parental role. So there's, different resources and support for those that you probably can offer as well.
And then you work with veterans, right, Dr.
Yes, most definitely veterans. That we're kind of one of the toughest populations because we definitely have that suck it up and, drive on, suck it up, butter cup mentality that we were taught. So like I say, for myself, I suffered for years, and the pandemic telehealth actually helped me come out to get therapy after, the pandemic, so many losses within the, frontline and the healthcare. Telehealth, I was able to go in that was my safe space. I didn't have to go into a place where people see me going somewhere. I was in the comfort of my own home, and I can just kind of let down. And I found a wonderful therapist through the VA that helped me, and I still have a therapist. I'm still a work in progress, and you have your good days, your bad days. It doesn't just go away like that. And there's also, right now I'm currently like as a psychiatric nurse practitioner in schools to actually learn more about mental health to help my fellow veterans and others in our community. So it is, if we need help, GHS, the veteran, they offer wonderful resources to reach out for help. So the biggest thing is recognizing that you need help, and that biggest that self-stigma, especially with the veterans we're taught, you don't seek help. You're weak if you look for help. You're not weak. You're actually strong if you seek out help, and you're taking care of yourself and others. You got to put the oxygen on you first, and then you can help others.
Yeah. And then as we think about our populations who might be baby boomers or mature, you think about loss, right? You think about friends who may not be here, what support groups are available or mechanisms are available when you've navigated through a lot of loss. And so certainly that presents its own challenges, and the resources that you all have described today are things that we can use to help our populations who may need that.
One thing we did not touch upon that I do think is important, because there's some overlap. We didn't really talk about seasonal affective disorder, and it's a real thing. And so sometimes people are like, oh, it's just the winter blues. Well, I would recommend if people can't, like post-holiday, if you can't quite get yourself out of the funk you're feeling, it could be seasonal affective disorder. So, that would require a clinical diagnosis, obviously, but sometimes there are treatments and therapies and modalities that can help that. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. All right, with our last 2 minutes, any last thoughts, tips, or tricks you want to make sure that people are aware of as we navigate our post-holiday experience and we move on into 2025? And some vitamin D supplements into the chat. So definitely talking to your physician about your vitamin D levels and what supplementation you might need. And then there was one ask for the grief support number again that meets on Thursday. If we could put that in the chat, it'd be amazing. But I will start with Dr. G, and I'll move around. Any last thoughts as we move into 2025 around mental health?
Oh, mental health. Like I say, the biggest thing is just recognizing if you need help. Like we say, oh, it's okay to be okay. But really, we're breaking the stigma. We're moving the needle with mental health. It's okay to come forward. It's okay to seek treatment, whatever way that you might have, it might be your church praying. But I always say pray, but don't delay. Merge those two things together. If you're, with your faith or whatever works for you, like say mindfulness, that way of quieting your mind and just getting that place where, you can just focus and relax and let go. And as Nurse T, she always say, you can bounce back and win. You can bounce back and heal. And, we have the wonderful resources in the community. just take advantage of them. Like they have free resources. Reach out to GHS, call the hotline, the VA hotline, just, reach out. And first, if you make a step, find someone that's, a safe space to have a conversation. And if you feel unsafe, that you want to harm yourself, most definitely seek help.
Thank you for that. Dr. Soderno?
Yes, that was such great advice to follow after. Goodness. So I would just say change is hard. Change is so hard. And a new year is an opportunity to try something new. And we should know whenever we try something new, it's going to be like this kind of process: 4 steps forward, 2 steps back, 5 steps forward, 1 step back. But ultimately, if we stick with it, if we're intentional, if we have support and accountability in that, and we have the resources in place, slowly but surely, things will get better.
Thank you. And last but not least, Carrie.
Yep. Lots of things are going through my head right now. I always like to end on a feeling of hope. Lots of hope for mental well-being, and just because things are bad today doesn't mean they have to be bad tomorrow. Definitely seek that treatment. It's okay to not be okay. And check on your elderly parents and grandparents and things like that, because I agree, like they're really susceptible during this time to struggle with mental wellness.
And then I'll leave with check on your strong friends too. The people that you don't think are going through things might be the people that you need to give a hug to or check on. Thank you so much for this wonderful expertise. This was wonderful. A great way to start 2025 and great advice and expertise. We look forward to seeing you next month. And thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you.